Right, in this video, we're going to talk about histograms, which are a super useful, super common tool to talk about the distribution of your sample data. So for Excel purposes, there are several different ways to do it, right? It's super useful. So there's super different ways. You can use this data analysis tool and do a histogram. But I personally find it easier and more straightforward to just go back to our old familiar insert chart section. And this one here is a histogram, right? There's also box and whisker, which you guys should be familiar with from our notes as well. But oops, deleting all my data. The data here is just some made up exam scores, and I want to look at the distribution of them. I actually do this for all of my exams and all of my exam scores. I look at how well y'all did, right? So I look at the histogram and it gives me a chart, right? So we're going to call this exam scores. Oops, we're not going to call this exam scores because Excel is going to get mad at me, right? So let's say this is exam score. And you can see that it is going from 54 to 66, and there are 3 scores in that range. And it is going from 66 to 78, and there are 8 scores in that range. Say that I want to look a little bit more narrowly, right? I can go in and I can look at the chart area, and I thought it was over there, but it is not. I want to format the data series, right? And if I go in, that's here. I'm right clicking on the data on these boxes and it's saying format data series, right? And that's bringing me here, right? It gives a overflow and an underflow bin, or I can just go in and say number of pins. I want there to be 5 bins or 6 bins or 7 bins, right? And you have to get kind of chubby to get that many bins down at the bottom edge, but this is the way that you can go through this. Oh, by category, that is not what we want. All right, so I would just say, go ahead and make it 10 wide. Then we've got our bins, right? If I wanted to do this differently and make sure that I had, all the A's in one, all the B's in one, I would have to kind of do some fiddling with my data and maybe give them categories. But I think this works pretty well for me. It just kind of gives me a skew, right? A nice thing. So actually, we can talk a little bit about this is a not symmetric histogram, a little bit of a peek forward. This is a not symmetric histogram with a tail towards the left side, right? So we would say that it is a left skewed histogram, um, which is usually what you will see with grades, right? It kind of tails off that way because most people you can't do higher than 100 and nobody's making a 0, right? So that's what we've got here. Now, that is for this discrete data, right? If we wanted to make continuous data. If we wanted to make another one for this discrete data, I was ahead of myself, we would go in and insert a histogram for this data. Right, and you can see that it's actually kind of trying. The issue is trying to make this consider it a okay, that'll work then. So here you've got I made up some code data here. And you can see that the boundaries now are set up so that the 1s are in this bin, the 2s are in this bin, the 3s are in this bin. You always may need to kind of fiddle with it a little bit, right? To get it so that you've got each value in the correct bin. So what I would recommend doing for this discrete type of data is to make a frequency table and then use that to make a bar chart or a histogram. Because really, when your bar chart is numbers, is it really all that different than a histogram? Argues out. Um, or the jury is out, is the phrase I was looking for. So the way to make a frequency table, right? You can definitely do it manually. Go to one. You can use this guy if you want to count. All right, well, there's 2 1s. How many 2s are there? There are 10 2s, right? Go through and do that manually. Not a problem. It would take 2 seconds. Another way to do it, if you have a lot of data, right? You may not always have just 23 things of data. Another way to do it is what is called a pivot table, right? So you're going to create a pivot table. You're going to select the data you want to summarize, the data you want to work with. You can either put it in a new worksheet or your existing worksheet. So I'm going to go ahead and put it in a new worksheet so I don't clutter this up. Now, what's going on here? Okay, so I have this nice new little thing over here. It's a pivot table fields. I have the field name, well, code errors, that's what I've got. And what do I want? I want the rows of the code errors, and I want the values of them, right? So row and then sum. Oh, wait a second though. I don't want sum. I go in, hit this little I button. I want there to be a count, right? I want them to summarize the number of code errors. How many do I have of each of them, right? So now I have my row labels and the count of code errors. And now, hey, look, I've got my bar chart. I have a value for each of these and how many there are for each number of codes. Now, slight note warning that you do have to go in and manually mess with your labels here, right? This legend shouldn't even be there, and we're going to do a bar chart of code errors. Get rid of that guy. So now I have my frequency table that I have used to make this bar chart, and I made this frequency table by using a pivot chart. This is a super useful Excel tool that can do so many things. You can add in filters, you can add in legends, there's all sorts of stuff. It is definitely an incredibly useful tool. So go in and see what you can do. Oh, now I can do count and sum. I can do all sorts of stuff, right? If you want to take the axis arrow out, just drag it away, drop it away. Now I've got a count and a sum, and maybe I want to know the average looking ahead a little bit, right? It'll give me all of these values. So Excel is super powerful, can do all of this stuff. You just got to know what to do.